for staying with us. One of the unfortunate incidences we heard of in the course of the week is that of the Lakurawas, who were told operate mainly in the country's northwestern region. They are said to be the new insurgent group that security analysts are voicing concerns about. Last month, defense officials said the group originated from the Sahel region, particularly Mali and Niger, after last July's coup in Niger disrupted joint military patrols along the Nigerian border. We also understand that the Lakurawas infiltrated northwest Sokoto and Kebbi states from neighboring Niger and Mali, following last year's coup, which severed ties between Nigeria and Niger and disrupted joint regional security patrols. Of course, as at now, the ideology of this new group is not known, but its emergence signals a growing threat in northwest Nigeria, which is already challenged by attacks from armed gangs and kidnappings for ransom. Let's have conversations around this morning. It's not really the way you want to end the year, but let's have conversations with Ladi Thompson, who is a security expert, and Professor Ademola Abbas, a professor of international law and global affairs. Both of them join us virtually this morning. Gentlemen, good morning, and thank you for joining us. Well, Professor Thompson, you have been on this for a while. Did you see, was this new group part of the threats that you always talked about, or is just an accidental evolution?
Very much. It's been quite a while. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Now, the truth is this: at this point in time in the history of our country, when it comes to this issue of terrorism, we did say 14, 15 years ago that apart from the major, that there will also be generics, there will be copycats. So at this point in time right now, with the security situation that we have, honestly, I think we need to be focusing right now on the right answers to the right questions. So the point is this: they are taking the lives of people. We knew this. We said it over and over again. We are hereby saying it again. So I would really appreciate, because of the value of the lives of the people, rather than quibbling about names, phrases, when we know the template that produced it, we need to evolve. If you go back to my interviews on this station, 10, 15 years, it was so obvious. Honestly, out of respect of the value for human worth, we need to focus now on solutions and how we can get away from this permanently, as opposed to discussing the same thing over and over again on television.
Well, it's the same. It's in the same spirit that we are having this conversation, because, as you know, if we don't understand what the problem is, evolving a solution might be a problem. Already now, unfortunately, there is that breakback between the community and military operatives in the country. So, if we don't know where the problem is coming from, how will we be able to talk about solutions?
Well, the template for this problem, frankly speaking, as of like 10, 12 years ago, we were involved in global meetings where many serious-minded nations were already tackling this new threat: asymmetrical warfare, hybrid threats. We're talking about the weaponization of even civilians, and an army that has no barracks, no uniform, has an ideology. It's a supremacist. We know what it is. We have always known what it is. We understand the way it multiplies. We understand the way it operates and the way it communicates across the world. So what am I trying to point out is that all along we have said to ourselves that if any country wants to defeat this thing, look, the names will continue to crop up. There's going to be a rush. It's a template that was created a long time ago. The template is still working till now. So what are we saying now? If we want to solve this thing, we need to go back to the things that we have mentioned way back since that have not been done till now, so that we don't come back again and say the same things and blood keeps flowing. The old solution is very simple. Number one, Nigeria has devalued human worth to the point where no nation can fight this new kind of war and win as long as the value of human worth is not redefined in a way that every citizen will be ready to be patriotic to the country. Number two, look, where there's no vision, the people will perish. There is no national vision. This thing destroys nations from within. It has done that to others. We keep saying the same thing again. Listen, we need to revisit the foundations of the country. There are floor lines, there are cracks. There are things that it is absolutely unintelligent for 200 and something million people to wake up every morning and attempt the impossible. Apart from that, we told you that all over the world, the militaries had deconstructed. We said these are no longer the days of cloth sweets, Trinity of War. Military strategies have been deconstructed all over the world to accommodate this new threat. And the truth is the final one is that you have to have a superior architecture of thought. As we're discussing right now, we are not 30 steps ahead. This thing is a global threat. It's global. It's a global threat with a local face. It's a hydra. It has sophistication. It is patient. It switches warheads. It's not only the military, the kinetics. We've said this again and again that the solution, the kinetic solution, is only about 36% of this whole thing. So it's painful to watch a country of our size, to watch a country with the kind of potentials we have, to watch a country with the kind of professionals that we have, being taken to the market by a threat that we should have handled long time ago. I hope you understand my angst.
Understandably, because I mean, talking about the same thing repeatedly for 15 years, it can be quite an issue. I was going to go to Professor Abbas right now, but for a second, let me stick with you, Pastor Thompson. So now that this is the situation we find ourselves, you've talked about the fact that there isn't a national vision. You've also talked about a number of other issues bothering around solving this problem. But the challenge here that a number of people might want to point to is there is no stream of activities, no sustainable stream of activities that can help to ensure that we are kept safe or we keep safe. Governments evolve every 4 years or every 8 years, and that means the leadership evolves. Consequently, policies also evolve. It would seem like as a nation, except for maybe 1 or 2 states in the country, we've had a situation where once a government comes in, policies evolve, initiatives evolve, leaderships evolve. For one, either for political patronage or for intended vision of the incumbent. So how then do we sustain this war that you are talking about, knowing that it is not something that just started? I mean, you've been talking about this about 15, 20 years now. So it's not something that's just starting. So how do we win this war? How do we sustain this battle to reduce your angst and also save lives progressively when we are unable to sustain a government in office for a good length of time or sustain a policy beyond one government or the other?
Good. I've said this and I'm going to say it once more. The first thing we must learn to do, which is the weakness of the African mind, especially in the places of leadership, is the inability to mathematize inquiry. If we crunch the numbers, we join the dots, we concatenate, we're going to discover that, number one, the architecture of thought is such that if the foundations have been removed, listen, let me give you a good example of what you're saying. The shambolic democracy, and I say that with a lot of deliberateness, that we are practicing, is supposed to be an American-style democracy. But if America tried to practice what Nigeria is practicing right now, it will collapse under 2 weeks. Now, what am I talking about? I'm talking about the fact that at the foundation of America, there is the fact that America is not a democracy, it's a democratic republic. And the fact that this thing is a global problem with a local face tells you that we have an advantage in that we should be talking about bilateral. If normally, no matter what it is, the number of political parties you have, when you have an existential threat to a nation, it is the duty of the leadership of the country to introduce a narrative. We need to introduce a single narrative. that explains to the country, look, there are at least 5 existential threats, which means your children's future, your own future, is not safe except we come together under a new national vision and then listen to what this man said. Was it on the 7th of October in 1960 at the United Nations General Assembly? Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa pointed out that this would come to happen in this country. And he mentioned then that all we need to do, he used the word eternal truth. What he was trying to point out was this: if we have a firm foundation, we will handle this thing easily. Look at the foundation of the American democracy. They went all the way back to the Greek philosopher called Cicero. And what Cicero said is that, look, don't determine what is right or wrong in a country based on the opinions of men. And he said there's something called natural laws and the God of nature. And he was able to extrapolate that there are what we call unjust laws and there are just laws. So if Nigeria's framework of laws is not the confusing, interesting confusion that it is, things that Awolowo spoke about in 1952, 1958, that things that, look, the patriots of Nigeria have spoken about for decades, and then till now, with the number of universities we have, the amount of research going on in the country, we are still saying that we don't know to go back to that foundation and ensure that Nigeria is actually a democratic republic, not just a democracy, not just a game of numbers. There's an amount of intelligence behind it. Why? Because then you will have moral standards. As it is right now in the country, the people are demoralized. They've been subject to 5 existential threats for so long. There's something called TMI, transmarginal inhibition. The average Nigerian is tired. And when they're tired, people begin to behave in diverse ways. First of all, it used to be tragic optimism. I told you that was developed. A man who was in Nazi Germany in the war camps in those days pointed out that there's a reality of pain, stress, and when it gets to a particular point, it becomes overwhelming. The brain shuts down. So the average Nigerian is waking up and getting up, looking around. What is the effect of this? It makes people self-centered. It makes people, it changes the personality of the average Nigerian. Nobody's thinking of God and country. Everybody's thinking about survival for themselves. And it just means that people are ready to backbite. They're ready to believe the worst things. Nobody's building consensus. All we need is a unified narrative. I remember I overheard a few years ago, General Ibrahim Babangida gave an interview and popped up and did mention that Nigeria needed a new narrative. And I smiled to myself then. I said, oh, thank God. Even the old war horses realized that Nigeria, if it's going to survive, needs a new narrative. So what am I pointing out to us is this thing is not as difficult as it is. Nigeria right now, the people are demoralized. Let me tell you what the first thing we have to tackle if we want to get serious. Nobody in Nigeria right now believes that good can triumph over evil. There's no nation that you can build in the world. Look, this thing collapses nations from within because it has its own moral code. It's a mixture. It's an ideology that takes advantage and wears the disguise of religion. Because of that, in a country that has no moral code that is sound, that governs an overarching moral code that will govern the entire country from generation to generation, excuse me, how difficult is it for us to call a meeting of the relevant authorities and the institutes that are in charge of establishing the moral code for a nation, instruct them, empower them to realizing that, listen, this is one of the greatest strengths that the nation needs if we're going to tackle this issue. The increment of the value of human worth, the worst form of corruption is when you devalue human worth. That's what's happening to us. So if we get the bodies together to establish this for us, simply, you will find out that we will be able to get away from the religious problem where people believe, listen to me, people believe evil will triumph. But the truth is this, even in the foundation of America, and I think we need to turn towards the Trump presidency. If you ask me, I've been listening to the chapter going on in Washington right now, and I've realized that if Nigeria is wise right now, a lot of Nigerians don't realize this, but the Republicans have always had better news for Africa than the Democrats have, unless they change their minds tomorrow. I'm not talking about living in America. I'm talking about from the African perspective. There's this film called, I think, 13 Hours or so. If the average Nigerian is able to watch that film and you read in between the lines of the script, you realize that the Republicans have always been friendlier in terms of if Africa can bring its case. Nigeria can be the game changer. Look at what is happening all over the whole place. It's not just a Nigerian problem. What we need to do right now is to take charge of the narrative, localize our narrative. Listen to me. Send in a team into Washington. There are certain committees, in Congress, certain committees in the Senate that we need to go and talk to point out that, look, how can the country that is styled after the American democracy be such a failure?
Okay.
Even Liberia, that has an umbilical cord that is American, is also a failure. We will seize the high moral ground, we'll establish proper relationships and come up with the solutions, letting the United States of America know that, look, we, Nigeria, we are bringing a solution that will help you in your country. Since you have a president now, the 47th president, Donald Trump, from what we have seen of his profile, this is the kind of person that if Nigeria does what is right, we are going to find out that we are going to be able to have U.S. policies that will work better, especially when we prove that instead of aligning certain interests, the proxy wars going on over Nigeria right now, and instead of governments behaving like house helps to foreign powers, we come up with a line that shows how the entire world, the globe, can be a better place if Nigeria introduces a narrative that will not only help us, it will help the entire globe, and it will even help the United States of America in expanding its influence properly.
Okay.
What am I talking about here?
Thank you, Pastor. We need to bring in Professor Abbas now. We've since been joined by Professor Ademola Abbas, Professor of International Law and Global Affairs. Morning, Professor.
Yeah, good morning. Nice seeing you again. Thanks for having me.
Yes, Mr. Thompson has described what we have as an existential threat, and he says that Nigerians have become demoralized and only think about how to survive. And when he was saying that, my mind immediately went to what the army chief said in the course of the week, when he said that these people come in as large groups, sometimes as many as 200 of them, on motorbikes, do the damage they want to do, and go away. 200 people cannot run or overrun a village or a community without being seen, and 200 people need sustenance. Some people are their couriers to get them food, to get them arms, to supply them water. Is it the same Nigerians who are being killed daily who are also sustaining these people wherever it is that they're hiding out?
Well, thank you very much again. Merry Christmas to you guys, and Happy New Year in advance, as we say in Nigeria here. Look, I don't think that is a very complex situation to unravel, to be honest with you. That is, if the question is, look, is it the same Nigerians who are demoralized, as the previous speakers said, that are helping people come in and help? It's not a very difficult thing to achieve. So, the pirates in those days, when they were very active, they live among their people. This was a community that was largely agrarian, largely fishing, and so on and so forth. And when they felt that a lot of injustices were being met out to them, they began to resort to self-help. In other words, you have the same community that were not looked after by the authorities. Actually, they started dealing with the pirates who were supposed to be acting on their behalf, who were giving them part of what they thought they were due for, that the government of the day was not giving them. What am I trying to say? If you have people coming in on motorbikes and entering Nigeria from whatever, and by the way, we have some of the most porous borders in the world, point blank, as far as a country as we're concerned. We're very, very porous. We have not done what we are supposed to do. But that's a discussion for another day. But let's focus on people just, on the motorbike and this and that. Look, as we say in Yoruba land, we say, I'm sure other tribes have the same kind of saying, that if there are no cracks in the wall, lizards will not wander into your household or homestead. It's as simple as ABC. You may have just 200 people jumping on their bike and coming in. They have local support. Local support from people who have been who feel, and sometimes justifiably so, that they have been abandoned by their own government. The things that are due to them are not going to them. So necessarily they become demoralized. And when you are demoralized, what then do? You look for alternatives. You begin to cherry pick between evils. You look for lesser evil. So if an armed robber comes in the name of Robin Hood to your area and goes to steal maybe $1,000 and looks at you and says, you take $10, $20 and go and sort yourself out. for not giving me up. You will do a deal with that because the government that you put in power doesn't even give you a dime in the first place. So there's that kind of connotation is at a very early level of analysis. But when you go beyond that, I don't think you need a Nostradamus to look into, to gaze into crystal ball today and say Nigerians are demoralized. I was talking to somebody a few weeks ago, and the person asked the question that whether somebody was depressed. And I joked that almost every Nigerian is naturally depressed. The things that will have pushed a lot of people over the edge in Western world. I think God has built Nigerians in a different way in terms of our capability and ability to absorb. I don't know the kind of shock absorber God built into Nigerians because I don't know of another humanity that can deal and cope with 1/10 of what an average Nigerian faces today that wouldn't have gone under. So I think, to be honest with you, yes, we are demoralized, we are traumatized, we are everything. However, for me, what is important in the whole thing is to take a serious look at where we are coming, and where we think we are going. That, for me, is a big challenge that we need to face. Look, we can see it, we can throw vitriolics, we can be vehement, we can be anything against ourselves. I was talking to somebody a few days ago. I said, look, and this is not making any excuse for who we are, but as a people, we need also to learn. We need to be able to turn. I mean, I agree with the fact that we have to begin to push our narratives. Let me give you an example. Again, I'm saying nobody's deodorizing whatever field is in our system in some particular area. But see what happened in America in the last elections. Elon Musk was giving cash out before that election, raw dollars. Almost $1 million given to people to vote in certain areas. You will never see an American press come out and call it vote buying. But we have it in Nigeria. If it happens in a third world country, that is vote buying. That is blatant corruption. I lived several years in the United Kingdom. One thing I never saw the British newspaper use to describe their politicians is the word corruption. Corruption does not exist, so to say, in their tabloid. You don't get it. What they will talk about is cash for question, is sleaze, is cash for honor. They deodorize all these things, they euphemize them. It doesn't mean that they are not there, they are there. And nobody is saying, so therefore corruption should be accepted in Nigeria. No. But we are saying that we have to start to begin to engage with ourselves. And you learn a lot when you're a little patient of your and a little savvy of your own heritage too at the end of the day. So we have to take the narrative and we have to use it in a way that will begin to make us a very, very serious people. But now, to be honest with you, I don't think anybody is taking us very seriously in the world anymore. I was watching some news on the CNN a few days ago, and they talk about about 10,000 people died on the sea in this year. Most of them are Africans. It was a footnote. And that is how unstrategic, how unimportant the whole continent has become, to a large extent, to the rest of the world. So yeah, we really need to begin to engage with ourselves. What we are doing now is what we cannot sustain. We cannot, in a proverbial world, we say that if an elder belt himself with corn belt, we turn yourself into a ridicule for hands to come and peck at in the first place. So nobody takes us seriously anymore. And that bothers me. It bothers me because we behave like a people that don't even understand what living is all about. I mean, Mr. Thompson talks about existentialist threat. Look, that is one of the most potent dangers in Nigeria. We don't just seem to realize the situation we are in. When people are talking about, whenever we're saying this and that, we say we'll get there. It's a common phrase in Nigeria. Oh, we are going to get there. Oh, I keep telling people, where are you getting to exactly? At the peak of Usain Bolt, as the fastest man on the universe, if you put Ademola about to come and run a race with Usain Bolt, and we are facing forward together, I might be hoping that one day, maybe Usain Bolt will get tired and begin to slow down. Maybe in 1,000 years, I'll catch up with him. But if Usain Bolt, with all his agility, is facing south, and Demola Abbas is facing north, even if he gets tired, I will never catch up with him. We are not running the same race. Nigeria is running a completely different race from the rest of humanity. Permit me to say. And I think the professor touched on something very, very vital. And that is the difference between a democracy and a democratic republic. People keep forgetting that most countries today that are very well developed in the world, whether US, UK, Canada, Germany, go and check it. None of them began with 4-year term in office. None. Sometimes you need much longer time. Even when you go to the Arab world, they are theocracies, so to say. whether you talk about UAE or Saudi Arabia, sometimes you need longevity, you need a lengthy period of time. In Nigeria, and I've said this on your program several times, democracy, even if you take democracy in its very banal form, democracy should be contextualized, should be autochthonized, should be indigenized in a way that will suit you. If it is 4 years in the UK, if it is 4 years in America, doesn't mean to work for Nigeria in 4 years. Let me just break it down for you. So you contest an election in Nigeria for 4 years. The fourth year you come in, you are trying to grapple with the element to even settle down. That's in your first year. We know that is the reality in Nigeria. If you are fast enough, you will start putting your cabinet together sometime after 5 or 6 months when you're trying to settle down. After a year, begin to say, what am I in office for? You're already in your year 2. By the time you get into year 2, you have to deal with the elements of Nigeria anyway. You have the first year in your year 2. By year 3, you are looking at the election next year. You start worrying about campaign. And whether you like it or not, that is not sustainable. It is not. Are we even having any conversation about the possibility, I'm just saying the possibility for argument's sake, of saying, what if we have a one-term our presidency at that level, a one term of 6 or 7 years, and hear me out. So you come in, and when I was a cabinet member of Lagos State, I think we tried to do that with LASU as an example. We discovered that Lagos State University was having problem with generic, transformation of one vital sign to another because they wanted to come back and this and that. And that will inform their policy choices at the end of the day. And we said, why don't you stop that? What if you have a vice chancellor for 5 years non-renewable? Do it in the country and say, you know what, because of our particular kind of situation in Nigeria, let's have a president for 1 year for 6 years, one term of 6 years. So you come in year 1, you do your nonsense in the first year, you have 5 years to focus. And because you know you are not coming back, your interest is no longer about you being reelected, but your party being reelected. And whether your party will be reelected or not at the end of 6 years will be determined largely by how you perform as a president. I think something tells me, and I'm not holding a crystal ball here, so something tells me we are likely to achieve more. Look, we've done this 4 years thing for almost 40, 50 years now. And we are nowhere. We are military whatsoever. We are nowhere to be found yet. How are we sure? Again, let me just stretch it a second further. Now I am not prejudging the outcome of the current president's, current government's policies. I have my take on that. Whether you like it or not, and I said it several times, on this channel. Personally, this is my personal opinion. I believe so much in some of the policies of the current government. They are bold. There were policies that needed to be taken. Now whether we can have a debate on whether there were, enough palliative to cushion the effect on people on this and that. And the previous speaker talked about, I think the previous segment about different segments of people that should have been taken care of that were not taken care of. I agree with that. We can debate all those. But did we need to remove subsidy? Absolutely yes. Did we need probably to deal with for forex and whatever market? Absolutely yes. Did we need to de-emphasize exportation and increase importation and increase exportation? Absolutely yes. Have they been done in the proper manner? We can debate that. But my worry actually is not longer about the current government. My worry is what happens with all this if another government comes in that does not believe in whatever gains the government has made. And we have had that in the past. Everything will go to waste. So we go back again to square one because it's focused on one man, the president. What if he begins to focus on one party, on the party, which have to come with the structure I'm talking about? Then you will know that you have 6 years to put something solid in power, whereby it's coming out something to building, not a government coming to waste it. I think those are the conversations and the discourses we need to be graphical now.
Mr. Thompson, do you get a sense that the current president is actually showing signs of seriousness in fighting all this insurgency we're talking about?
Where? I expected much more from the current president. If we do an analysis of his deft dealings and the way he ascended to power against all odds, I would say that if we joined hands with him across the nation, we would be able to do what is right and get this nation on track. I personally am very disappointed at the level. I expect a lot more brilliance from him than what I've seen on display. I know the challenges of ruling a behemoth like Nigeria, But when I remember what he single-handedly did, look, the templates, the narratives that existed before he came, for him to become the president of this country, he was able to take apart those narratives single-handedly. All the divides in Nigeria, he was able to breach them. He had enough architectural thought to be able to do the impossible. But having gotten there, there is no point in us. Let's get back to the narrative again. The difference between a 100-meter dash and a relay race is that when the president comes in, and these are the kind of things I expect President Tinubu to be able to do. From what I have seen, he has a good grasp. He is an excellent communicator, and he understands human nature. And there are certain things he needs to put in place for us to know that this is really a serious president who will be remembered for something. We cannot complain. Listen, the template he made will not work. He knew it will not work before he got there. He knows the obstacles he faced even to get there. So moving forward from this point, I personally, and any statesman, any person who was around in Awolowo's Western region, we expect much better from President Ahmed Tinubu than we are getting from him. Now, in a relay race, the reason why the baton exchange is there is because it defines the narrative. That's what makes it a relay race. So it's a moot point in a democratic republic if the foundations are properly set. Even if it's a 2-year, even if it's a 2-year or 3-year tenure, the continuity is what the narratives produce. Now, if you look at, I like to use the American examples. If you look at the American Democratic Republic, I'm sure that Nigeria knows that they studied Polybius. He was the first person to suggest the combination of a monarchy, aristocracy, and a raw democracy. Look, monarchies usually breed tyrants. Aristocrats turn into oligarchs. Democracy turns to mob rule. He was the first to suggest joining them together with checks and balances. These people sat down, did the thinking. This is what the level of thought, or depth of thought I expect from a president like Ahmed Tinubu. Montesquieu, who was the French, go find out from any American. Montesquieu was one. Look, at a time during the Constitutional Conference in America, they were thinking of having 4 presidents. I think it was John Adams, who said no. We've studied and we've learned from Cicero, we've learned from Polybius, we've learned from Blackstone, we've learned from look, they sat down, granulated this thing, and came up with a new model of governance that never existed before. It took only a handful of people to do it. Most of them were from Virginia. So if it is from the Southwest that the President Ahmed Tinubu is able to amass and present a narrative to the country, everybody recognizes a winning narrative. But let us pretend as if we have never read the Willings Commission report in the 1950s. Let's pretend as if we never read the dual mandate that Lugard wrote. Let's present, look, there's a book, A Fatherless People, by one young, well, not so young man anymore, in the 60s, in Britain. I can't recall his name now. He wrote a book called The Fatherless Nation. And I can tell you something, this is not nuclear science. We can sit down and crunch these things and come up with a tropicalized narrative for the African democracy and globalize it, join lives across the nations, and give value to the lives of our people. It won't take 4 years for us to turn Nigeria around. So please, let it be made clear to the presidency of Bola Ahmed Tinubu that we expect a lot much more from him than what we're seeing. Okay. Listen, we can sit around and commiserate with him. The divide and rule that was in there, he knew what it was before. We saw what he did, the deft moves he made during the elections, the brilliance he displayed then. Where is it now? Because we are now back to square one. And right now, I can tell you, I'm watching over Nigeria. I'm still taking all my reports from all parts of the country. And I'm telling you something, this cat-mouse game will not go on for too long. It will not go well for the country if we continue this cat-mouse game. We expect more statesmanship. We expect him to come out and provide a template for Africa.
One of the things that you said, Pastor Thompson, that I think is cheering is that you have a vague idea of what it means to run a behemoth of more than 200 million people in one country. Is quite something. We're running out of time, but let me bring an issue to Professor Abbas. Now, we're talking about keeping the nation safe. And one of the issues that I believe that Pastor Thompson has also spoken about today, as he has spoken over time, is the war of narratives. And I mean war of narratives. More and more people, are very proud of Nigeria. And I'm looking at, what represents Nigeria, if not the leadership of the country. A few eggs will always spoil the image for others and all of that. But one of the narratives that it's, that's received its knocks and kudos from a good number of Nigerians is that of Nigerian British politician Kemi Badenoch. And I don't know, how do you think that kind of comment from such a highly placed Nigerian reflect on the security or the affection or disaffection towards the country?
Well, then, thank you very much, Ayo. Look, I followed, the back and forth between, the leader of the Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch, and, and the Vice President on the one hand, and Kemi Badenoch and Nigerians on the other hand. And for me, the first thing, that has always agitated my mind is why, as a people, we always feel the need to approximate ourselves. I'll tell you what I mean. You don't hear about certain Nigerians. Whenever a Nigerian achieves something overseas, there is always a rush by us as a country to annex them quickly, to approximate them, as if somebody is stealing them away from us. Oh, he's a Nigerian. Oh, she's a Nigerian. Oh, we felicitate this and that. It's as if we're in dire need of heroes and heroines. That is something about who we have become.
Okay.
When you have done something excellent, you don't need to approximate anybody. Whether you are Kemi Badenoch or you are the boxer, you are this and that. They will feel naturally impelled to come back to say, I am this. I am a Nigerian. So for me, that is the first thing we need to address. Okay. Is why we need to first of all need to approximate them. Now, having said that we approximate. The next question then is, I look at what Kemi Badenoch has said. Okay, I'm not in the UK to replicate Nigeria. Police this and blah 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 yada yada yada. When I read through it, to be honest with you, personally, I don't see anything she's saying or she has said that I don't know about my country. These are things I've known about my country for several years. I've said some of those things overseas. And as Nigerians, sometimes we have this warped idea of patriotism. We think patriotism means not speaking certain truths about your country. No, I don't accept that. I can be a patriot and look at my country and say, you know what, my country, you are full of filth. It's tough love. Because I love my country, I will speak about my country in a way that my country might not be happy. That is because it comes from a very good place. It doesn't mean that if I'm not deodorizing everything, oh, we are great people and this and that and blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. So therefore I'm not patriotic. So I don't see lack of patriotism in that. However, I might pick an issue in the way sometimes we choose to express ourselves. And the leader of Conservative Party or anybody in that kind of position should be very, very careful, how they express their innermost feelings. And not just about their country, but about other places. The same Kemi Badenoch in the UK said, made a reference to why she doesn't have lunch. The lunches are for whims or lunches for whims or something like that. And she came out, when the British people came after her, she came and clarified what she meant. That tells you some things, she said, wasn't acceptable in their system. So it doesn't mean that, because she said something about Nigeria, she should be crucified. No. And to be honest with you, the vice president responding to her and this and that, for me, was highly unnecessary. Sometimes.
Well, I think at the end of the day, just as you said, it's a function of perspectives. All we want is a nation that is safe and prosperous for everyone at the end of the day. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Professor Ademola Abbas, Professor of International Law and Global Affairs. And we've also had Pastor Ladi Thompson, who is a security expert. Gentlemen, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you.
So we take another break, and when we return, everything rises and falls on leadership. Yes or yes? We'll be right back.